Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, running a little bit behind this morning. That's okay. The show must go on. We will get to the topics today. First and foremost, if you're new, thank you so much for joining. If you're a seasoned veteran of the show, thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate. It helps you. When I get on the show here, and I start that live stream, and I start seeing the numbers pop up of people like, hey, like we got some folks in the audience, and we got on Twitter and Rumble and YouTube. It's one of those things that helps get me up and gets me helps. Well, it surely doesn't help me speak, but it helps get me up in the morning. We'll put it that way. All right. So I just wanted to, just kind of want to mention that every now and then. Just want to make sure that I let you know. Thankful for you guys. Um, Today, what do we got? You know, um, we have two stories coming from two different parts of the country, and they're not that dissimilar, unfortunately. But let me tell you a story bef- as a prelude to this. So before we get into these two stories, we're gonna watch two videos. I believe there's some profanity, so if you're with your family, I generally try to keep this family oriented show. However, I can't always um, I can't always account for the media that I'm talking about. But it's nothing gratuitous, so it's not gonna be too bad. But let me tell you the story. So several years ago, I live in Jacksonville, Florida. Several years ago, I went to something called Coffee with a Cop. And it's exactly what you might think. Just a couple of officers set up at a donut shop, a coffee shop, not a donut shop, but, same difference. And you go and you sit down and you just chit chat with them. And at the time, I don't remember what I was doing. I think maybe I had the day off or something like that. And I heard about it. And I was like, oh, you know what? I can do this. I'm going to go to this. So I went and I sat down with these two officers. It was a man and it was a woman. And we just started talking, and through the course of the conversation, they brought up they brought up a couple things actually that was very interesting, and we were talking about how citizens are always grabbing their phones and they're like, I'm recording you, officer. You shouldn't be doing that. That's terrible. You're going to jail, whatever, whatever things that citizens say while they've got their phones and they're recording something that they think is inappropriate. And sometimes it is. So as I was talking to them, they were like, well, we don't. Um, Here's the thing. They said, we need citizens to remember that most police interactions don't end up in conflict. Like there's no fight, there's no struggle, there's no, like, it's usually just we pull you over, we give you a ticket, and you go on about your way. It's unpleasant. You might spend a few minutes extra that you didn't want to spend, but hey, it's no big deal, right? Pull over, have a conversation. You go on about your day. I go on about my day. No violence. They said, and they wanted that's what they were asking. They were like, please, like citizens, remember this. And so I said, okay, cool. Will you remember this when you pull people over? When you pull people over, can you come up to the car? I mean, look, I get it. They're pulling you over. They're the likelihood is strong that you're going to get a ticket. Okay. This is not a pleasant situation under any circumstances. So I don't ask for the police to come up all jolly and excited and be like, hey, Citizen Joe, how are you today? I'm doing well. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to write you a ticket. Right? Like that would be like out of that movie Pleasantville. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. Pleasantville is like the 1950s. And, like everybody went from black and white to like I can't remember what happened now, but they went from black and white to color in the movie. It was like, it was just like this stereotypical 1950s persona of, what it was like. Well, that's not what I'm asking for. I'm just asking, like, will you come to the car and maybe not act as if I'm a deranged killer from the very beginning? And they do this. They walk up already escalated. Okay. And the problem is a lot of times they're pulling you over for something simple. They're like, hey, I saw you speeding. I saw you without your seatbelt. So you roll up as if I'm Charles Manson. And it's just like, wait a minute, why'd you do? So I asked him, I was like, hey, would you remember that when you're interacting with regular everyday citizens? And then they said, whoa, whoa, well, you just don't understand. And they repeated the line that officers love to repeat. We never know what we're walking into. Like, and so I told him, I said, okay, well, if that's the case for you, I don't know what I'm stopping and getting into either. I don't know if you're going to be an overly aggressive officer, right? Like, I don't know if you're going to be a bad officer, kind of one and the same, but let's think of bad officer is even worse than overly aggressive, right? Overly aggressive might mean they come in, they talking with the gruff voice, in terms of their communication, they are being aggressive. And then you have like your bad officers who are just who are, that that communication turns into action. Okay. And so I was like, well, I don't know what I'm walking into either. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. So why would you expect me not to film this? Because if you are being aggressive and it needs to go to court, well, it's my word against yours, and this is stacked against the deck, right? This is why we want body cams, so that we can see how was this interaction, what happened. Was the officer acting like a jackass from the very beginning? Because here's the thing, and if you're an officer, you need to listen. Like, let's put it this way. This is my podcast. I'm the law around here. So if you're an officer, you listen to me. This needs to be you, and you listen to me. Okay? Because I'm the citizen here, and I'm telling you how we feel. We've heard how you feel. We get it. You think that every time you pull somebody over, it's going to turn into bad boys. Like, you're just going to be dealing with some gang members. They got Uzis, and you're just never going to go home and see your family. Okay. I get it. We've heard that story before. We've heard it over and over. We're tired of hearing it. Seriously. Citizens are tired of hearing it. That's why we record the hell out of you, because we don't trust you. That's why. There was a comedian a long time ago. I've said this before. There was a comedian a long time ago. He made a joke, and I'm not going to try to tell the joke because I'll totally butcher it. But he makes this joke, and he's like, have you ever had an officer pull up behind you and then you sighed in relief? He's like, no, not really. Like, unless you called them and there's like an altercation and you're about to get stabbed by somebody, you're not in relief when you see an officer just show up randomly behind you. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? Am I speeding? Is my seatbelt on? Is this? Is that? Do I have are my plates current? Like, you go from happy go lucky chill, I'm just riding along, driving along, minding my own business, to all of a sudden now our stress level has went up just by the mere fact that you showed up. Our stress level goes up. And I wish I should have saved this link. I saw an officer just the other day. It was one of those dumb video offers where he's like in his patrol car and he's like talking to the phone, and he's like, "Guess what, guys? You know what I do for fun sometimes?" He's like, "Sometimes I want to go to the bathroom, but I wait. I wait until somebody passes me, and then I slowly pull out so I can go to the bathroom. I do that just to make you nervous." And he like admitted that he does these kind of things on purpose. Like, he waits. He doesn't just like say, I got to go to the bathroom, or I would like another cup of coffee. Let me leave where I am, go and get it, and then I'll come back. And then he just happens to leave at the same time that he desired it, right? Or needed to go to the bathroom. No, he's like, I wait intentionally so that I can strike a little fear in you. And then officers wonder why people don't trust them. Well, maybe it's the way you're behaving. Maybe it's because you guys are talking out both sides of your mouth instead of listening. Because if on one hand you tell me that most interactions don't involve violence or an altercation, and that I should be chill and I don't need to record you and all this other stuff, well, then you should lead by example. I mean, aren't you the law on the street? Right? Like, you're being inconsistent. Let me throw this comment up on the screen because I just want to make sure it's very clear that I agree with this. Film the police, all caps. Absolutely. Get that camera on. Why? Because as of right now, we do not have anything close to a harmonious relationship with the police. It is literally us versus them. And I don't mean that in a fighting way. I'm not suggesting that people go out and be like, it's us for them. We got to get them. We got to get them first. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is we, as the citizens, do not trust police. Now, sometimes some people do. Like there are some people, and these are the people that they believe that all these bad incidents happen because, well, the person that the police were interacting with must have been a bad person. But that's not always true. In fact, it's frequently not true. We see story after story after story. Some of them end well. And when I say end well, I mean the person lives to tell the story. Some of them end horribly, and the person does not live to tell the story. And what happens? Usually nothing. We've investigated ourselves and we found no wrongdoing. The officer, he followed protocol. Like, oh, your protocol ends. If your protocol ends up with people dead, maybe you need new protocol. Throwing that out there. Yeah, I know I'm not an officer, although I have done similar work when I was in Bosnia. So, I'm not entirely ignorant here because I know a lot of people, a lot of the back the blue people, a lot of officers will be like, well, you need to spend a day on the streets so you understand what it's like. Well, maybe you need less time on the streets because if you're getting to the point where you think every citizen is a violent criminal just waiting to pop, then maybe your view has been skewed. Because again, going off of what that officer told me, and officers, and I've talked to other ones, and they generally agree, most interactions do not end up with an altercation or violence. And I believe that to be true. Just officers don't seem to believe that. Or they believe it for us, just not for them. Weird. All right, so let's talk about what stories we got going on. So we actually have one here in Florida and we have one in Riverside. You might have seen these videos. So let's put them up on the screen. So I just wanted to tell you that story real quick because I went and I talked to them and I made no headway. Now, at least maybe I put the ideas in their mind and hopefully they thought about it over time and maybe they've come to a little bit better position. I can't say, I don't know, but that's the conversation that I had with them. And I've personally had officers pull me over and act aggressive for no damn reason. In fact, but you know what? Let's do this. Let me tell the story because I don't want anybody to accuse me of, just, going by some, media clip. We love to do that, right? We love to say, "Oh, you saw it on social media? Yeah, you're just, and we kind of get dismissive because clearly everything we see on the internet is wrong. It's like we went from one extreme to the other, right? Everything must be right, accurate and 100% correct, or it must be wrong. And no, there's somewhere in between. In fact, most everything is somewhere in between. So, really quickly, and then we're going to dive into these stories. So, I was probably in my 20s or early 20s, and I was working for a fastener distribution company. Basically, what I did was I would go to work and we would get our orders. And I worked in the office and in the warehouse. So I would help get the orders ready for the day. We would go out, I would go out and I would help fill them, which would require me going out, pulling down pallets of nuts and bolts and screws and washers and stuff like that, and then filling these orders. And then we would ship them out to different customers. So that's what I did. And we had a particularly heavy week one time. And the boss was like, all right, gonna have to come in early. So there I was driving on my way to work in a red Ford Escort on my way to work. Five in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, somewhere around there. And all of a sudden, an officer hits the lights. I pull over. And the first thing he did was he shined those lights, blinded the snot out of me. I was like, good Lord. So I flipped my rear view mirror because I was like, all right, well, dude, I can't even see. Like this was intense. It was almost like he just took a light and just shined it right into my eyeball. So, so he comes up to the door, and he's right about in between the passenger, the driver door and the passenger door behind me, right, like right about there. And I've got my window rolled down about halfway or so, and he's like, "Step out of the car, please." I'm like, "Oh no," I think he said, "Step out of the car slowly." I think he said, "Step out of the car slowly." I was like, "What?" He might have gave me some more instructions. I mean, I don't know if that's verbatim exactly what he said, but that's basically what he said. And so I'm like, "What the hell?" So I'm like, "Okay." So I slowly get out of the car, and he's like, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Now, mind you, I'm like a 22-year-old guy. Okay. I don't know anything. And so I said, "No, I was wearing my seatbelt. I was driving the speed limit. I'm just on my way to work, blah, blah, blah." I was doing a lot of talking, but I was letting him know, like, "No, I have no idea why you pulled me over. And to the best of my ability, to the best of my knowledge, I was following all applicable laws." So letting him know, like, pretty sure I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, officer. So he says, he starts off and he goes, "Well, let me tell you first." He goes, "When you," and I'm you're not gonna believe me, but I promise you, like Scout's honor, promise you, this is a true story. He said, "When you flip your rear view mirror like that, it tells me you don't wanna be blinded." Now, I'm a 22, 23, somewhere around there. I'm an early 20s guy, and I'm a smart ass. And I'm like, I'm just I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know what to say because what I wanted to say was, "Yeah, no crap, Sherlock. Duh. Who the hell does? Nobody wants to be blinded. Are you dumb?" I wanted to say these kind of things, but I'm like, I can't say these things because I can get in a lot of trouble here. I don't know what kind of trouble I can get into, but it's surely something. Like he's not going to want. So I'm biting my tongue because I don't know what to say to this man. I'm like, well, yes, that is true. We agree on something. Fine. Right. It's not really. I was just kind of. I don't remember what I said actually. It was. I probably just said yes, sir, or something like that. I don't know. And so I'm really dumbfounded because I'm like, dude, seriously. So anyway, the story gets better or worse, depending on your perspective. So he's like, "Let me show you why I pulled you over." Good. Let's figure this out. So he walks me back behind my car, and we're about 5 or 6 feet from my car. And he points at my car and he's like, "What do you see?" I'm like, "My car. I got my tail lights are working. I presume my brake lights were working. I know my headlights were working, but we're in the back of the car looking at. So I'm looking at the back of a red Ford Escort. It's like a little sedan. And I have no idea. I'm like, everything looks good to me. Like, I don't know why. He said, "You see your license plate cover?" I had a smoke covered or tinted license plate cover. So it was literally, I went to Walmart and I just happened to be at Walmart one day and I saw this cover that goes over your whole license plate and it was smoke. Like it was, like a light brownish color. And I was like, "Oh, that looks kind of neat. That would make my car look nice." And I put it on my car. I bought it like, I don't know, $15, $10, I don't know, whatever it was. And I put it on my car. And he said, "I can't read your license plate very well," or something like that. And I was like, that that's all of this for that. And then he was like, "Next time I see you, it better not be there." He literally made this like demand. Now, I never did find out whether or not it was legal or, whatever. I didn't really look into it. I just removed it. Um, but I was like really dumbfounded because I'm like, dude, all of this because I had a smoke covered license plate. That was your problem. You couldn't just pull me over and walk up and say, "Hey man, I hate to do this to you, but you probably bought that license plate cover somewhere and it was legal to purchase, but it makes it difficult for me to read your license plate. And if I get a call, I need, about a car or something, I need to be able to read the license plate so I know if you're the, the person or this vehicle is the one that I'm looking for, right? And there are several ways that this could go. If I stole the car, he's going to want to know, hey, is this the stolen car that I'm looking for? That's one way. Another way is if the car is stolen from me, he might want to say, is this the car that somebody stole from DL? And if he can't read the license plate number, it might go and detect it. So I can kind of understand if he wanted to say, man, look, I hate to do this to you, but I really need to be able to read the license plate number as clearly as possible. Sometimes in a moment's notice, if you're passing by, because I get calls all the time about, a missing car, stolen car, stuff like that. And so, we're just trying to be out here to be helpful and make sure that if something bad happens, we can respond accordingly. So we- I'm just gonna ask you, man, please remove it, right? Or if it's against the law, hey, man, it's against the law. It's kind of trivial, but it's kind of important. Like that's how we could have approached it. He could have done it that way. That would have been fine. Now I know my friends that aren't really big on the police might argue against it anyway, and that's fair. But what I'm getting at is the reason that we don't trust people is because of events like that. Because we're told that, hey, you know what? You, Joe Citizen, Joe Public, you should behave and think about our interactions in a way that we refuse to behave and think about them. You think about them the way we want you to think about them. We'll think about them the way we want to think about them. And, you just do everything our way. And then you should be content and know that we're all about your safety. No, that's not how it works. Sorry about that, officers. Hope you're still listening. So let's get into these videos. Because these are some interesting videos here. So this first one, let's see, which one do I want to play? Let's play Miami. So this is a football player named Tyreek something. What is his name? Tyreek Hill. I don't know sports, so I had to think. I had to look that up quickly. So this is from Miami, and this is Tyreek Hill. He's getting pulled over. We're gonna watch it, and I'm gonna give you my opinion as Joe Public. Okay. Now I'm not an officer. Okay. And I haven't spent time on the streets, dealing with Zoe Pound and all these other gangs, right? Like I think Zoe Pound is the one of the predominant ones in Miami, at least according to the movies. So, but like it's my opinion. And if you're an officer, then hopefully you will walk away with here's how citizens feel about me and why they feel this about me. So let's take a watch. Down a little bit. I'm gonna turn this down a wee bit. We'll turn it up. All right, here we are. All right, so he starts and he's asking about. Let me give me a second here. All right, so right there, he walks up to the car and he's like, "Why don't you have your seatbelt on?" So think about what I just said. Think about when I just said I went out to the coffee with a cop and they said, hey, man, most interactions don't involve violence or conflict. It's very simple. We pull you over because you got a headlight out, a tail light out, you've got something else going on with your car, you're speeding, whatever the case may be, improper change lane, you ran a red light, whatever. You did something that you shouldn't have been doing on the road. And in most cases, it was a relatively simple thing that you did. You know, we're not all OJ out here, right? Driving a Bronco down the road after we just done killed somebody allegedly, right? So that's where we're starting. We're starting with the seatbelt violation. He pulls him over because he's got a seat. He's missing a seatbelt. Okay, that's the argument. Okay, so he's demanding that the window go down. Because so what ended up happening was Mr. Hill here, he gets pulled over, rolls his window down, and then I believe he like gave his information or whatever, and then rolled it back up. Okay, now Shouldn't be really be a problem here because again, this is supposed to be a seatbelt issue. Okay? It's a seatbelt issue. And I want to point out something. That car is a McLaren. It's a $300,000 car. So let's add to what officers already once told me. They said most interactions end up, non-violently. Okay. So now let's ask ourselves, how many times has an officer pulled over somebody driving a $300,000 car and they've been a crazy lunatic killer? Like, how many times does this happen, right? Compared to your regular, everyday, average cars that most of us can afford, right? How often does that happen? Like, let's narrow this down. And I'm not asking the officers to know about statistics. I'm just like, we may not know the actual numbers, but if you're an officer and you've been on the force for a while, you kind of have an idea how often you pull over or somebody is pulled over in a very expensive car and they go buck wild, crazy, violent, right? Versus people in regular, everyday, average cars. Why is that? Because, well, I presume that most people with a lot of money aren't necessarily violent, especially with the police, right? Like that's my assumption that because there's fewer of them. So even if the percentages, let's just say the percentage of rich people versus not rich people, let's say the percentages are the same for those who are violent, who end up being violent. Since there's fewer of them, that would also mean there are fewer violent criminals. So therefore, this is an added layer to say, I probably don't need to be so hostile. So let's continue on. Like, I don't know what to do.
Hey, keep your window down. Keep your window down. I'm going to get you out of the car.
Okay, so he's like, keep your window down or I'm going to get you out of the car. Like, that's it. Like, there's no other reason. Just if you don't do everything that I say, I'm snatching you up. Now, let me ask you, officers, if you were treated like that, let's just say the tables were turned. Let's say that citizens, let's just say that we live in a world where citizens could make an arrest like that. They could pull you over and they could bang on your window and they could be like, you roll this damn window down or I'm yanking you out of it. How would you respond? Would you be like, all right, you know what, Mr. Citizen? No, you wouldn't, especially if the premise of an officer is to keep the peace, right? Not go around badgering people. All right, let's continue.
As a matter of fact, get out of the car.
There it is. There it is. Matter of fact, get out of the car. So now he's like knocking on the window. You keep your window down. The window's down. We can see it right there. Look, look, little couple inches. It's not a whole lot, a little couple inches. And why do people tend to not roll the window down? Because every officer in the world, they love to go, I smelled weed. I smelled alcohol. Right. And how can you argue with that? Well, I thought I smelled it. So so this is why we roll our windows up, because you're all a bunch of damn liars. I mean, maybe not all of you, but enough of you, right? Like that's how, like, look, police, I know you're going to be mad at me, but in the same way that many of you think that if a young black male is doing something, that's a little out of the ordinary, that maybe he's a criminal. Yeah, we think that of you too. We think that of you because of moments like this right here. Hey, get that window down. You know what? I'm going to snatch you up anyway. Right. And the real problem here, as we can see, is that the officer is barking orders and is demanding 100% compliance. But from my perspective, you don't get 100% compliance ever. You pull me over, yes, I might argue with you. Should I? No, I should not. But do people? Yes. That is the work. That is what you signed up to work with. That is, you police the streets as they are, not as you wish they were. That's how you need to approach it. And as they are means if you pull somebody over, they might be verbally combative. Deal with it. Get over it. Especially if it's something that's supposed to be minor. Now, here's where it gets rough.
Give me that. I'm gonna break that freaking window. Get out of the
All right, so now he's threatening to break the window to yank him out of the car. Again, just keep in mind, here's what he did wrong, quote unquote. He was not wearing a seatbelt, and he wasn't complying like they wished for a window. That's what went wrong. That's what happened here. A window and a seatbelt. And they're gonna threatening to break the window. They're demanding he get out of the car. They're getting ready to yank him out of the car. All of that because, as we're told, most incidents end peacefully. There's no reason for citizens to worry.
car. Get out of the car right now. We're not playing this game. Get out. 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 What part of that don't you understand?
All right. Now, does this look good? Because we're literally living in a time where people are like, defund the police, blah, blah, blah. You are too aggressive toward black people, so on and so forth. We've heard this over and over and over. So you might think that police would say, let's work on our interactions with black people. Now, I'm not asking you guys to get all DEI and, be like, oh, it's a black person. We got to treat them extra nice and, let the people of color speak. I'm not asking you to go that far. That's ridiculousness in the opposite end, right? I'm just saying, like, maybe you just stop acting this way toward everybody. How about that? And then the black community can look and say, wow, they're not being super aggressive to us. Because that's, the black community is looking out for the black community for the most part. I mean, communities do look out for each other, but, communities have a sense of our community, what's happening in our community. Right, let's continue.
Drew, hey, Drew, I'm getting arrested, Drew. I'm getting arrested.
He's getting arrested for a seatbelt and not rolling his window down enough.
When we tell you to do something, you do it.
Oh, there it is. There it is. See, this is all about control. There's no public keeping the peace here. This is not about safety. Like if I was somebody driving by, they're not doing all of this to protect me or any of the other people driving by or anybody walking by. It's not what's going on here. All of this is because they're barking orders and demanding, he comply without any question, argument. And that's just not simply, that's simply not reality. Now, should it be? I mean, you could argue one way or another. Personally, I look at it and I say, if I want to argue a little bit with the officer, because I think that officers are human beings, and they can be wrong sometimes. And the hope is that if they start going down a bad path, and then I point it out and say, hey, I think you're being a little aggressive here. Hey, I'm exerting my rights, that they will back the heck up. But no, that's not what we're seeing here. Let's continue.
Understand? I'm getting out. You understand? Not what you want, but what we tell you. You're a little fucking confused. I'm getting out.
Oh, he's confused. He's a little effing confused, right? Like, okay, confused about what? Oh, about the power trip. That's what he's confused about.
Too late. Too late. All right, bro. Take me to jail, bro. Do what you gotta do, bro. We will. Good, bro. It is good. Hey, don't worry about it. I hung up the phone. You stop crying, bro. Y'all. So move. Good. Bro, you beating on my window like you crazy. You set him up. Why y'all beating on my window like y'all crazy for? Damn.
All right. So, in fairness, I'm going to say if I have a $300,000 car and somebody comes beating on the window, I'm probably not going to be very happy either. Like, it's $300,000 car. Don't beat on the window, especially for, again, a seatbelt violation. I mean, really, a seatbelt violation requires the officer to bang on a $300,000 car or a $30,000 car. It really doesn't matter. Because if I have a $30,000 car and that's what I can afford, that's expensive to me. So it doesn't really much matter. It just, in our minds, we tend to think of it as a little bit worse because 300,000 is a lot more than 30,000. But the truth is, if what you can afford is a $30,000 car and somebody comes beating on the window, you're probably not going to be very happy either. Because, hey, I work hard for that $30,000.
Beating on my window like he crazy. I ain't do nothing.
Now, I will say this. Let me interrupt here. It's just he is this is not a good way to interact with the police. At the point that like it as a rule of thumb, there are plenty of videos from lawyers out there that will tell you, shut up. Just shut up. Don't answer any questions. Don't argue with them. Okay? And that is the proper advice. And I'm saying that because the lawyers say it. Okay? So if the lawyers, and there's plenty of them, there's several of them out there. There's the, shut the F up, and there's the other guy that talks really, really fast. You've probably seen that video. So is it Tyrese? Is that his name? I got to remember this guy's name. I should probably, yeah, Tyreek. Tyreek. Okay. I'll try to remember that. So Tyreek here, now he is well beyond any, what would you say? Like we might say, okay, well, there's a little flexibility if the officer initially pulls you over and you're trying to be a little cordial. Okay. Maybe that's fine. Now, it's not a good idea, but like the second best good idea is to, at least be cordial with them. Okay. And then at a certain point, there is no more cordial. They're clearly past that point. And you do not need to say anything because, to be honest with you, they've already shown their aggression right here. They've already shown it. So everything he says is just exacerbating that situation. And I'm not suggesting that the victim here is at fault. What I'm just saying is there is a point for which you might actually make things worse. And there's no, like, he's cuffed. So if he makes things worse, it could be worse for him. Right. So this is a matter of your safety, if nothing else. Right. But also, it goes toward, hey, when you go to court, how is this person behaving? Were they belligerent all the way through? Well, then your jury of peers might go, well, you were belligerent all the way through. Why were you so belligerent? Maybe you're just a bad person. Maybe this poor officer, he was just pulling you over for a seatbelt violation. Right. Do you see how this might play out? So he's actually in the wrong here for sure. Right. You could make an argument and say, hey, initially, him running his mouth a little bit at the very beginning. Okay. No big deal. The officer should have been able to deal with it. I think they should have, and, move along. But now we're at the point where we're in the middle of altercation. So this is the point where you shut up for sure. Like if you didn't shut up the first time, this is this is where you absolutely must do it. Absolutely right now, so that it doesn't get any worse. So let's see where get back to that.
Hey, don't park there. Don't park
there. All right. So now this is his friend showing up. I don't know his friend's name.
I just had surgery on my knee. I just had surgery on my knee, bro. I just had surgery on my knee, bro.
All right. So now they're forcing him down, and he's like, "Hey, I just had surgery on my knee." So again, this is why I said a moment ago, there's a certain point where you need to shut up because the altercation has begun. So now the officers, whatever aggressive mode they walked up to the door in, now they're in more aggressive mode because they're physically manhandling you. They're forcing you around. They just forced him to the ground. Then they forced him up. Now they're forcing him to sit back down. Apparently they're Catholic. I don't really know. But point being, this is the time where had he shut up, he might have had some grace and said, I will sit down. Please help me. I just had surgery on my knee, whatever. And I'm only saying that so that the physical aggression doesn't get worse. Right. And I'm not advising you necessarily like, this is when you should talk. This is when you should not talk. What I'm just saying is, I know you're going to most likely. So you might as well be wise about it. Hey, officer, why'd you pull me over? I pulled you over because you weren't wearing a seatbelt. Okay, here's my information, right? Where are you going? My lawyer advised me not to answer any questions. Right? Are you detaining me? Yes, I'm detaining you. Whatever. You need to get out of the car. Whatever. Like the conversation that you should be having should be the least amount possible. Right? Because later, that keeping the officer from becoming more aggressive may go toward a little bit less physical aggression later. Is what I'm trying to get at here. Okay. So see, this is where he keeps talking. Chill, dog, chill, blah, blah, blah. Now his friend is pulled up. So now the officers are walking over to his friend because his friend pulled up. According to one report, he was trying to de-escalate the situation. This is a terrible idea because, as we all know, officers are not prone to hearing you once physical aggression has started. They're not. They're on a single focused mind. This guy is resisting. I need to force him into compliance. And then anybody else that interferes, well, they're basically now a bad guy too. That's just how it's seen. And I'm not telling you this because I was an officer or I've talked to officers. I'm telling you this because I can see it right on the friggin' screen.
Hey, listen.
Listen. Hey, man, they got Tariq. The cops over here beating on him, man. They over here.
Okay, so that's a little exaggeration. They weren't quite beating on him, but this is, I can understand a friend wanting to assist, but this is just making it worse. But again, I'm not giving a pass to the officers. Okay. I think they were wrong from the very beginning. Pull them over for a seatbelt. Fine. Whatever. That's your job. Okay. That's what you got to do. Fine. Pull them over, give them a seatbelt ticket, move along. Make sure that it doesn't become any more hostile than it has to be from your end, right? Like the officers should be doing, but I didn't see that. And so now we've got a friend here showed up.
Just get in the car. Just get in the car.
On the side of the
Now
Hey,
you
get
might
in the car.
you might remember Florida recently passed some legislation. Let me see if I can't. Do I have it up? Let's see. It's not that one. It's not that one. Maybe yes. So it was SB 184, impeding, threatening, or harassing first responders. So the summary of it says impeding, threatening, or harassing first responders, prohibiting a person after receiving a warning not to approach from a first responder who is engaged in lawful performance of legal duty from violating such warning and approaching or remaining within a specified distance of the first responder with specified intent. I believe and it's been a minute since I've read it, but I believe 25 feet. If you're within 25 feet, you are considered harassing a first responder. And in Florida Republicans, they changed the law. They updated the law to include police as first responders, which kind of sort of makes sense, but they really did it just so that they could and they framed it like, well, we got to protect our ambulance and our firefighters. But what they were really doing is they were just trying to make yet another law that favored the police. So he is, I don't know if that's 25 feet, but presumably it's within 25 feet. And so they are technically in violation of the law, which means, guess what? That means officers who are already being aggressive and they're throwing around a football player, they're ready for action now, right? Because like that's how things work. If I get into a tussle with somebody, it's going to take a moment for me to dial it back down. They're dialed up. They're ready. They're ready to take this guy down. And then these guys show up. So this is a bad idea. But again, we are not defending the police so much as just identifying the good and the bad and the ugly here.
In the middle of the street.
I'm in the car. You gotta go before you get a ticket.
Hey,
I'm
you're
not
in the car.
Who's the driver? This is my car.
All right, move. You gotta move right now. Let me have your license. You're gonna have ticket too. Let me have your license. Let me have your license.
I'm leaving.
I'm not playing. Let me have your license. Your license right now. Your license right now. You're not gonna give me your license?
Hey,
the car and leave.
You're not gonna give me your license? I'm leaving.
Let me have your license. Your license right now. Hey, your license right now. Or I'm gonna lock you up. Your license right now. Your license right now. You're dealing with me now. Your license right now.
All right. So that's the end of that video there. So, okay. So what do we learn from that, folks? Number one, do what the lawyers say. Shut up. Number two, law enforcement, they love to have power, right? Because all of that could have been so much simpler. It was supposed to be a seatbelt violation. All of that started over a seatbelt. And then, and I get it. You can point out, and I did. I pointed out several times where these men made mistakes, right? But also there was that no time from what we saw. Maybe you see it differently, but from what I saw, the officers made no attempt to de-escalate. They escalated based on a citizen acting like a citizen. Citizens are going to object. They're going to be annoyed when you bang on their $300,000 car or their $30,000 car, right? Nobody likes to have somebody else banging on their car, especially over something stupid like a seatbelt. Like I get it. If you think that I'm a straight up killer and I just came from a murder scene, yeah, you're probably going to be banging on my car. So I kind of get that. But if you're just like, hey man, you weren't wearing a seatbelt, write the damn ticket and let me go. Don't make it any more difficult. And if I am the citizen, am not behaving so well, then you, the officer who has supposedly had all this training and knows the law and is, the law on the streets and whatever other things that you guys say. If you guys are the one with all the power, because you have backup and all that good stuff, right? You guys, if that's you, then you be a leader, a proper leader, and figure out how to de-escalate when you can. But they didn't. They made no attempt to de-escalate. They just kept escalating, and they were like, "Oh, you don't want to open up your window? I'll bang on your window. Oh, you know what? You don't want to roll down your window far enough? Well, then I'm just going to yank you out of the car. Oh, now you're on the phone talking about you're getting arrested. Well, you should have listened to me. Oh, now let me stand you back up. Now let me force you back down. Oh, you got a bum knee because, like, that's not what happens to sports players at all. Like football players never have bad knees. Right? Oh, you're saying you got a bad knee? Let me just force you down a little bit harder. Oh, your friends show up. Now they're trying to de-escalate the situation, or at least figure out what's going on. Nope, I'm going to come over and aggressively yell at them as well. Right? At no point did the officer try to de-escalate and say, look, let's try to work this out peacefully for all involved here. And that is why people don't trust you. So I don't give a damn that you're like, oh, boo-hoo, I may not come home. BS. You come home every night. Most of you do. And you tell us, Joe Citizen, you shouldn't be so worried about it because, again, as I was told, most incidents don't end up in conflict or violence. Okay, fine. If they don't, then we all can dial it down. But I'm relying on the officers to do more of it because you are the trained professional. That is your job to manage the situation. It's not my job. Nobody pays me as a citizen to manage a situation. The lawyers will tell me, DL, shut up, so that I don't have to work so hard if you go to court. Like that's basically what they're like, the more you talk, the harder my job is. So you shut up so I don't have to work so damn hard. Right? Make your lawyer bill a little bit lower. Right? That's effectively what's going on there. So my lawyers might tell me, hey, shut up. Don't say anything. Don't escalate the situation. But that's not my job. I'm not getting paid for it. Officers are getting paid for it. And they should seek every opportunity to de-escalate. And if the time comes where they have to engage in physical violence, it should be clear to damn near everyone. Should be no questions. We should look, and we've seen these videos. Like they not with officers, but we see videos of people getting into altercation, and most citizens can look at a video and go, "Yeah, that dude had it coming. Shouldn't have done that." Right? That should be an officer's goal. An officer's goal should be that anytime a video comes out of them in altercation, they should be like, "All right, I did everything the right way, such that citizens around the country are going to watch this video and go, yeah, that dude had it coming." Because sometimes they do, right? Not this case. All right, let's watch the next video. This video is a little shorter. This one is actually even more disturbing. And before I play the video, let me put up on the screen. So this comes from Riverside. So the Riverside Sheriff's Office in California, they put out a statement. So I'm going to put the statement out because I think this is interesting. So let's put this out. So we are aware of the video circulating on social media and are currently looking into the incident. As part of this investigation, we have obtained all of the body-worn camera footage that shows a complete and unedited version of the event with a different perspective based on the totality of the circumstances of the call for service. Then the cropped version posted to social media. This incident occurred over a month before being posted to social media and only days before the arraignment of the individual arrested for delaying, obstructing an investigation, and contributing to the delinquency of minors. The deputy was answering a call from a neighbor of a loud party noise complaint. And then it goes on to say, let me pull this up here up on the screen to get the rest of it here. All right, so there we go. All right, then it goes on to say the Riverside County Sheriff's Office did not receive any complaints of misconduct or wrongdoing concerning this incident before it was posted to social media. A thorough investigation will be completed to include an administrative investigation to determine if discipline is warranted. Okay, so let me tell you something about this before we get into this video. They point out that this happened a month ago. And then it went out, it hit social media, and people all over the internet were like, whoa, wait, what? What? This is a terrible video. And then the Riverside office said, we're going to do an investigation. So they didn't do an investigation to see if there was any wrongdoing initially. And they should have. They should already be able to come out and say, all right, we see that you're upset, citizens out there on the internet. Here is more footage that's going to add context that you don't have. That's going to make this seem a little bit less. And we've seen those. We've seen those videos where a video comes out and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And then you see another video and you're like, oh, I see what happened. Okay. Yeah, it turns out that guy was the bad guy, right? That happens. So they should have already been prepared. Every police station in this country, every sheriff's office, what they should do is they should, anytime there's an altercation, they should review it and say, was the officer in the right? In what ways were they in the right? Okay, great. Now, if something comes up later, we're prepared. We're prepared. And they really shouldn't even do it for the sake of social media. What they should do it for is, to make sure that every action that an officer takes is the correct one. Because what happens when an officer has to arrest somebody? They are taking away our freedom. If an officer comes in right now and arrests me, it's going to be wild for starters because, I'm on a live stream. But if an officer came in to arrest me right now, okay, that means they're forcibly taking me from my home. They're forcibly locking me up. I'm going to probably have to pay some money, if nothing else, at least for a decent lawyer, right? So there are all these things that are going to happen. They should be able to defend their actions and say, okay, we had to do that. And so therefore the cost, the loss of your freedom, the cost that was imposed upon you, that was all warranted. It was all legitimate. That's what should happen. And they should always be prepared. So the fact that this came out a month later and people are squawking about it, and then they're like, well, we're going to do an investigation now. No, you should have already done one. So that doesn't make me feel any better about you guys doing your job. So let's continue on. Let's watch this video. All right. So this one is in Riverside, California.
I'm not going to step outside your house. Same way I'm right here.
Because you walked in.
No, because they opened the door and ran from me.
And
That's why.
my home.
And now that I'm inside your house, I own your house right now.
Okay. So wow, this is just crazy. That's amazing. So from the video, what appears to have happened is, and based on the Riverside police, based on what they put out, okay, I haven't done a whole bunch of research, so there could be more information, okay? But based on what we have, here's what I understand. I understand that somebody called in a noise complaint, okay? There was a party, a noise complaint. Maybe there was. Don't know. Maybe mom was having a party with the kids and giving them alcohol. I have no idea, okay? So then the officer comes out. The kids open the door, close the door, and run. Surprised? Is anybody surprised that when an officer shows up, that a kid might close the door and run? Well, yes, that's what a kid, especially if the kid was doing something they weren't supposed to do, or they did something they weren't supposed to do the day before, or they're just like, hey, you know what? Here's an officer. Who knows why he's here? Right? Like, this is not surprising. So this is, again, I go back to this idea that officers need to behave on the streets with the understanding of I am patrolling and maintaining, order in society based on how people behave, not how I want them to behave. So we need to level set and we need to say, what is the expectation here? If a child opens the door, they might close it. That does not give me permission to walk into their house. Furthermore, then when the homeowner says, you are in my house, you are uninvited, you need to leave. Unless he has a warrant or some serious evidence of criminal wrongdoing that requires he force himself in the house, he should absolutely exit. Now, we have to be careful what we say around here. If my neighbor were to come over to my house and force his way in and refuse to leave, there would be consequences and they would be legal. The same should apply to officers. And it has. Remember Breonna Taylor? They came in shooting, killed her, and her boyfriend shot at the officers, hit one of the officers, and was acquitted. Why was he acquitted? Because he was like, look, I didn't realize there were police barging in the house. Somebody just kicked the door in. All of a sudden, I grabbed my gun and started shooting before I realized there were officers. Right? So I'm not really saying anything. I'm not telling people to go out and start blasting people. What I am saying is officers need to recognize that in this country, it has been upheld that if they are not in the house when they should be, right? Like if they do not have legal, what's the right way to say it? If they can't prove legally that they should have been in the house, maybe I'm not sure if that's the way I want to say it. But anyway, if they can't prove a legal reason to be in the house, then they are subject to the homeowner defending their home. And that's too bad. Then you might not go home because you own somebody's house, because the kids opened the door, closed it, you decided to walk in. Again, this is the story as we know it right now, because they're just now getting around to doing an investigation to make sure that the officer's actions were correct. Let's continue watching this video. It's not very long, I don't think. All right, so here's the beginning. All right, so it's clear from the sound. If you can hear from the Ring doorbell, he opened the door. Like somebody opened the door. He's standing on the porch. They close the door. He opens it and goes in. If that had been a neighbor, or a stranger, an intruder, they could have been shot. Maybe not in California. I don't know. I'm not sure what the gun laws are out there. I'm sure they're pretty strict. But in many cases, that could lead to somebody being shot. From a libertarian perspective, you have the right to defend your home against anyone. That includes law enforcement. That's how we believe. Now, we also temper that and say, like, if you shoot an officer, you damn well better be correct. But the same applies to an officer. If you shoot a citizen, you damn well better be correct. If you deprive a citizen of their freedom, you damn well better be correct. If you pull them out of their car, throw them on the ground, pick them up, force them back down, arrest them, all for a seatbelt, and because they didn't want to roll the window down, you better be correct. And in that case, that's a tough argument to make, because I'm looking at him saying, you could have de-escalated that and you didn't. In this particular case, he could have just knocked on the door again, banged on the door, called for backup, whatever, I don't know. But from what we can tell so far, it appears that the kids opened the door, closed it, and then he barged in. So let's continue watching. And then he tells the woman he owns her house. What? Like that alone should be a problem.
You do not have the right to be inside my house. I will talk to you outside.
No.
You don't have the word. You don't have the right to be inside. I will talk to you outside.
You want,
Officer.
I am not gonna step outside your house.
You do not have a
We're
warrant
gonna
to be
talk
inside
right-
my house.
I'm not inside your house. Okay.
You're inside my
Let
house
me tell you why I'm right here.
because you walked in.
No, because they opened the door and ran from me.
And
That's
I-
why.
So let's be clear. See, this is when people criticize me and they say, dude, Do you know what it's like to be, an officer and never know if you're going to come home? Do you know what it's like to be a person whose kids opened the door and ran from an officer, which, by the way, is not a crime. It is not a crime to open the door for a teenager to open the door and run from an officer in their house. Okay. The officer didn't say, hey, stop, you might be the burglar that I'm looking for, and then make chase. That's not what happened. He knocked on the door, they opened it, they closed it and ran. And then he's like, oh, that gives me permission to come in the house. Really? No. In my opinion, that gives the homeowner permission to defend their home. That's what that gives. And we don't like talking like that because everybody likes to sympathize with the police. And we forget about incidents like this. These incidents are serious. And so, I don't know if there's other evidence that would show that he did belong in a house, but so far I'm not seeing anything. And I'm seeing quite to the contrary. By the way, I want to point out, she has given him multiple opportunities to de-escalate the situation. She said, look, you need to step out of my house. I will come out and I will talk to you, but not in my house. She is asserting her right, her Fourth Amendment right, her right to privacy, her right to her property. She's asserting her rights, and he is not listening. All because some kids ran from him inside the house. Inside the house, right? And supposedly he was called for a noise complaint. Now, if he was called for a noise complaint, what is the first thing that any officer has to do? They have to assess the situation. So what is he assessed that is determined that he can just barge into somebody's house? What assessment has he made? By knocking on the door, the kid opens, and he's what? He's determined that they're a criminal already? He's already got that figured out? I mean, is he Jesus? He sure doesn't look like it. He's sure as hell not sounding like it. He's sounding like a tyrant, just like the other ones that we watched with Tyreek.
I'm telling you, and now that I'm inside your house, I own your house right now. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. What I need, I don't care if you know your rights.
See, there it is. I don't care if you know your rights. He just doesn't care. And there are way too many officers on the force that believe this, that have this attitude. They don't care about your rights. They don't care if you know your rights. They're going to try to assert their authority. This is one reason why why lawyers always tell you to shut up, right? And why they tell you that an officer will never be called to testify on your behalf. Why? Because they're trying to find somebody that's guilty. That's what they're doing. And this should make every American in the country angry watching this video. Like, it should make people so angry that the Riverside police force is sweating bullets. And the reason I say that is because they should be like, man, we better have a really good reason for all this happening. A really, really good reason. But that's not what's happening. People aren't outraged because we start with this assumption that police are always the good guys and we don't hold them accountable. And police don't hold them accountable, right? Like what's that saying? Like if you have something like if you have 100 police and 99 are, let's say if you have 100 police and one of them is a bad officer and the other 99 do not basically turn on him or call him out or hold him accountable, right? If the other 99 aren't holding that one accountable, then you have 100 bad officers. That's how it works. And you know what? Citizens have to do that. If I am withholding information from about a crime, like I could get in trouble, right? Like if they ask me a question, or if I tell them lies, right? Like I can get in trouble for this, right? They expect me to cooperate, and potentially snitch or whatever on my fellow man. They expect me to hold my fellow man accountable. So why can't they? See, this is the problem that I have with police, right? There's way too much do as I say, not as I do. We don't have to follow the rules that we want you to follow. There's too much of that. All right. So now I'm criticizing people again. Don't ever make a threat to an officer. Just like that, like she starts off with an opportunity for him to de-escalate and she lays it out. She's like, look, if, you know, if you step out, I will come out and I will talk to you, but not in my house, right? You are in my house. You do not belong. I'm asserting my right. I'm comfortable with that. Now, should she have maybe had that conversation? Would a lawyer say something different? They might. I am not a lawyer, but just as a regular podcast guy, just yip yapping on the internet, I'm going to say I have no issues with that because she's basically telling him, I'm willing to work with you, but here are the terms under which we can come to an agreement. And he has decided, nope, I belong in your house, and whatever I do must be the right thing. So, again, police officer escalating the situation.
Talk to
And I
my-
will talk to you outside.
I'm not gonna talk to you
What
outside.
the fuck? What do you want inside my house? Bring your supervisor to my home now. Yeah, bring them all. You have no right to be inside. No, don't fuck them.
Please.
You have no right to be inside.
Now, she is right there. She's telling, I presume her son or, one of the kids there, she's telling him to basically shut up. And good, because honestly, that makes the situation worse.
Open the door to their minors. I'm the adult here. This is my home.
She says she's the adult.
She's not my daughter. Get the fuck out of my
I'm
home.
not gonna get her out.
Then call your supervisor right now
4:15 wins.
and put me in the front. I full dog
But I
dare
didn't
you.
touch it.
This is my home. bro.
So again, I wouldn't personally be like, I triple dog dare you or I double dare you or whatever she said, right? Like I wouldn't dare an officer to do anything because as we've seen, they will do it. And I wouldn't threaten to have my dog come and bite them. Though I do understand what you're trying to do is you're trying to assert and say like, look, this is my property. You are in violation and therefore I can defend my home. And the fact of the matter is I don't think that there's like the way that like he's not leaving the property and the cards are stacked against her. So if this had been a regular person or if this had been a stranger, then aggressing against that person might be received well in court. Because it's an officer, it won't be. Because they'll say, well, you should uh, you should basically do what the officer says and then fight it in court, which I kind of understand. But at the same point, if we're going to live in a free country, then that means everybody has to respect everybody else's freedoms, including law enforcement.
Oh, you're in my house.
I am
You're
telling
in my house.
Okay, so now he attacks her.
You're in my house.
So there it is. So you can see she at no point touched him. She's just like pointing and she's like, you're in my house. And then he grabs her and starts getting physical. So everything that this officer has done, at least according to the video and what we know, is exactly what could get a regular person shot. Think about that for a minute. I want you to think about that. Everything that the officer is there over what? A noise complaint? And he's forcibly in somebody's house. Now he's grabbing a woman who has made no threat toward him whatsoever. She's just saying like, look, you're in my house. You don't belong. You need to get out. She's asserting her right. Absolutely. Joe, guilty before proved innocent. That's how this comes across. Like, hey, you're guilty. Now, some stories kind of suggest that she was contributing to the delinquency of a minor. It's hard to say what that means. Presumably, maybe there was a party and there was some alcohol. It's all presumption. I have no idea. But again, none of that is being talked about in in this conversation. The officer isn't asserting. He's not like, look, I can't leave because we've had a call about noise and there's concern that you're contributing to the delinquency of a minor. You're giving these kids alcohol or you're letting them, do some hardcore heroin or something like that, right? Like there's none of that in the officer's conversation. All he's got to say in this whole video so far is, I'm in your house because your kids opened the door and ran away. Because that doesn't happen. It's funny. It's not really funny, but like comical in a weird sense. I don't know how many times my son has, some like a friend has come over and he's went over there, opened the door, closed the door, and ran and be like, daddy, daddy, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. We're still working on it. Right. So imagine if that was an officer and he's like, oh, well, that little 5-year-old ran from me. So therefore I get to come in the house. Like, no, you don't. Like, you don't belong in the house. And I support citizens' right to defend themselves. Again, I know people don't want to hear it, but an officer needs to have a proper reason to be in your house. Hey, we're here because, you know, we got a domestic call. We come in. I saw you smack the woman, so I came in to deal with it, right? Like something meaningful. All right, I'm going a little long today. Let's finish up this video.
Just stop. You're good.
Yeah, I'm not hurting
Oh,
you.
she's good.
Am
You're
I
good, Mama
hurting
D.
you?
You're good,
Did
Mama
I
D.
hurt you? Did I hurt you? Did I hurt you?
I told you, right?
Did I hurt
I told you
you?
to step away.
Did I touch you?
I've been recording this.
Out of this entire interaction, the most craziest part is this part right here. When this officer literally told this lady the fact that she doesn't own the house, he owns the house right now. But y'all tell me what y'all think.
Ever once did I touch you? Keep this on video.
I am.
Did I touch you? Your supervisor right now.
Mama D.
Put me against the wall. No, they don't have to.
Please, Mama D.
No, don't go inside. Don't go inside.
We're not to go inside.
Don't
It's
go
just- I
inside.
just want to de-escalate.
Don't
It's done.
go.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Did you hear that? I just want to de-escalate this. In 2 different videos, you have people trying to de-escalate, and the police are like, nope, no de-escalation here because, you know, every altercation is, you know, something simple and citizens need not be afraid. But I totally got to be afraid. Why do I got to be afraid? Well, because I keep escalating the damn situation. That's why I got to be afraid. I don't know if I'm going to be able to put my badge down on my nightstand and sleep next to my wife because I keep escalating a situation over a seatbelt or a party. That's the message that we're getting. So and I get it. Police could like argue and say, DL, you don't understand. You don't understand, Mr. Officer. And it's time that people tell them. You need to change how you do things. Now, look, if you come to somebody's house and there's violence happening and you got to kick it into action, and that person is being a threat to you, like a real threat to you or to somebody else, and then you engage physically and you even harm them, most of the time, for most people, we're going to be like, yeah, shouldn't have been doing that. You know, if you show up and there's a man beating on his wife and you snatch up the man and then he takes a swing at you and you slug him a couple times and then cuff him and throw him in the car. I mean, maybe, you know, I'm not going to approve necessarily of any particular violence in specific, but if that's the way it plays out, most citizens are going to be like, he shouldn't have been hitting his wife, right? We're going to be on your side. Again, if the evidence shows you had no other choice and there was no opportunity for you to de-escalate. But the moment we see that you're the one escalating the situation, especially over something that at least starts out as trivial or a fact-finding situation, when you get called to a party, you're on a fact-finding mission. That's your first thing. You got to figure out what the facts are. What's going on? Did the neighbor call and they were just mad and they called and complained about, somebody and made a false police call or, maybe exaggerated the situation? It's possible. That happens all the time, right? So you're on a fact-finding mission and you need to behave it. And you need to recognize that people have their rights. I feel like I'm just repeating myself. I think I'm done. I'm done, folks. Like, I think you get the point. I find these both to be an outrage, and it may come out later that there was, more legitimate reason to be pulled over or for them to be arrested. But that doesn't change that I feel that they escalated the situation where they could have de-escalated it, and they did not. And you are the trained individual, Mr. Officer. I expect you to do the de-escalation. And if I see videos where people in the video are like, hey, can we de-escalate this? And you're not trying to de-escalate it, then I'm pointing the finger at you. And you can cry all you want and run to your Republicans and pass all your crappy laws that protect you because clearly you need it. But at the end of the day, citizens still hate you. That's what I got to say. At least some of us, but not too much. Like if you're a good officer, and I know people don't want to hear that, but there are good officers out there that are trying to de-escalate. And I've ran into some. But for these folk, these kind right here, you're an asshole. Period. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry, folks. I know I'm trying to keep this family friendly, but we need to start holding them accountable. We need to say, look, you better have one hell of a reason that you manhandled a citizen. And if you don't, then you should be punished. We should send a message. And the police, they should send a message to their own peers and say, we're not tolerating this. We want a good name. We want people to think positively of us. We want, when we pull behind somebody, just because we're driving in the same direction as them, we want them to not think twice. But right now, that's not the case. All right, folks. Good question here. Don't officers swear an oath of office to uphold the Constitution? Not really sure, but it doesn't seem like it. Anyway, I hope you found this show informative and inspiring. I don't know if there's anything to be inspired about. Maybe inspired to not become an officer, or if you become an officer, to be a better officer than some of these videos and to hold your fellow officers accountable. But whatever the case is, thank you for tuning in so much. You can catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you're there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.